The most ridiculous royal deaths in history. This is King Adolf Frederick of Sweden, and this guy literally ate himself to death. He ruled from 1751 to 1771, and his reign was pretty chill. Sweden was at peace, people had rights, and they passed the world's first freedom of the press law in 1766. But Adolf Frederick isn't remembered for any of that. He's remembered as the king who ate himself to death. On February 12, 1771, it was Shrove Tuesday, the day before Lent starts, when Christians give up certain foods for 40 days, so people would have one last big feast. Adolf Frederick went all out. Lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, smoked fish, and champagne. At this point, most people would stop. But the king was just getting started. For dessert, he ordered semla, Swedish pastries filled with almond paste and whipped cream, served in bowls of hot milk. According to the popular story, he ate 14 of them. Now, modern historians say the 14 semlas detail might be exaggerated. What we know for sure is that the 60-year-old king died that same day from digestive problems after this massive meal. His preparation for Lent prevented him from ever experiencing Lent. When Adolf Frederick died, his son took over and immediately ended Sweden's Age of Liberty, created a dictatorship, and started a war with Russia that Sweden lost. Swedish schoolchildren still learn about Adolf Frederick as the king who couldn't resist one more dessert. Speaking of fatal food choices, let's talk about King Henry I of England. He was the son of William the Conqueror and ruled from 1100 to 1135. Smart financial reforms, strong legal system, most educated of his brothers. But Henry had a weakness: lampreys. If you don't know what a lamprey is, picture an eel that looks like a nightmare. They're weird fish with circular mouths full of teeth that latch onto other fish and suck their blood. Underwater vampires. And they were a delicacy in medieval times. Henry loved these things. Problem was, lampreys are extremely fatty and hard to digest. His physician repeatedly warned him, "Don't eat so many of those." Did Henry listen? Of course not. He was the king. In 1135, Henry was visiting family and decided to feast on lampreys. His doctor told him this was a bad idea. Henry ignored him and ate a massive amount. Shortly after, he developed severe stomach pain, and then King Henry I died from what was basically a really bad case of indigestion. King Martin I of Aragon had ruled since 1396, and by 1410, he was getting up there in years. On May 31st, Martin was already feeling rough. He had just eaten an entire goose, causing serious digestive distress. While Martin was lying in bed trying to recover, his favorite court jester walked in. The jester's name was Bora. King Martin asked where he'd been. The jester responded, "Out of the next vineyard, where I saw a young deer hanging by his tail from a tree, as if someone had so punished him for stealing figs." That was the joke. But something about this bizarre image sent King Martin into uncontrollable laughter. And he couldn't stop. Historical accounts claim he laughed for up to 3 hours straight. He laughed so hard, he fell out of bed. And then he died. Medical experts today think the intense physical strain, combined with his stressed digestive system, triggered a fatal cardiac arrest. King Martin of Aragon was literally killed by a mediocre joke about a deer stealing figs. His death ended his entire royal family line. Alright, we need to talk about kings who died on the toilet. But if we're telling history honestly, we can't skip these stories. King George II ruled Great Britain from 1727 to 1760. He was the last British king to personally lead troops into battle. But that's not how he's remembered. On October 25, 1760, King George II woke up at 6 a.m., just like always. He drank his cup of hot chocolate, and then he went to the bathroom. A few minutes later, his valet heard a loud crash. When he rushed in, he found the 76-year-old king dead on the floor. George had suffered a catastrophic aortic dissection while using the toilet. An aortic dissection is when the main artery in your blood tears. It's often fatal. In George's case, the strain of doing his business, combined with standing up, caused his aorta to rupture. The royal physician documented everything. This became one of the first well-documented cases of aortic dissection in medical history. But let's be real, King George II, ruler of a massive empire, died while sitting on the toilet. For a man who'd commanded armies, it was about as undignified an exit as possible. And he's not the only one. Edmund Ironside was King of England for exactly 7 months in 1016. He earned the nickname Ironside because he was tough, fighting hard against Viking invaders led by Nut. Edmund won several battles and showed incredible bravery. But eventually, he lost a major battle and had to sign a treaty. England was divided. Edmund got Wessex, Nut got everything north of the Thames. The treaty had one special rule. Whoever died first, the other guy got everything. That's basically an open invitation for assassination. Sure enough, just 1 month later, on November 30th, 1016, Edmund died. Now, here's where things get murky. Contemporary sources from 1016 don't mention murder. Edmund might have died from battle wounds. But about 100 years later, medieval chroniclers started telling a much more colorful story. According to these later accounts, Edmund was murdered while using his private toilet. The story goes that an assassin hid in the cesspit underneath the toilet seat. When Edmund sat down, the killer struck from below with a dagger. Some versions say it was a spear. Another claims it was a booby-trapped crossbow rigged to fire when someone sat on the seat. The truth? We'll never know. Modern historians think Edmund probably just died from battle injuries. The toilet assassination story might have been political propaganda or just a dramatic legend people couldn't resist repeating. But either way, the story stuck. For centuries, people have told the tale of Edmund Ironside, the warrior king who possibly, got stabbed in the butt while on the throne. And by throne, I mean toilet. Prince Philip of France was the heir to the French throne in 1131. He was the oldest son of King Louis VI, destined to become king himself. Everything was going according to plan. Then, he rode his horse through Paris. In medieval times, people let their farm animals wander wherever. Pigs, chickens, goats, they'd roam the streets looking for food. On this particular day, a pig was snuffling around for scraps in a Paris street. Prince Philip came riding along when his horse and the pig suddenly collided. The pig darted out unexpectedly. The horse reared up. Philip was thrown off, hitting the ground hard. His own horse then fell on top of him, crushing him to death. A pig, a common street pig, ended the life of the heir to the French throne and completely changed the line of succession. The incident was so scandalous that officials passed a law banning pigs from wandering Paris streets. They enforced it so seriously that they'd sometimes execute pigs that broke the rule. Philip's younger brother became king instead and ruled as Louis VII. His son would become Philip Augustus, one of the most important French kings in history. So, in a weird way, that random street pig shaped the entire future of France. King Pyrrhus of Epirus was a legendary Greek general who lived around 300 BC. He was known for brilliant military tactics, but also for victories that cost him so many men they weren't really worth it. That's where Pyrrhic victory comes from. A win so costly, it's basically a loss. Pyrrhus had conquered cities, led massive armies, and was considered one of the greatest military minds of his time. In 272 BC, he was in the Greek city of Argos, fighting in narrow streets, close quarters combat, sword to sword. During the battle, Pyrrhus was fighting an enemy soldier. The soldier's elderly mother was watching from her home, terrified her son was about to die. So she did what any desperate parent would do. She grabbed the nearest heavy object and threw it. That object was a roof tile. The ancient historian Plutarch documented what happened next. The tile struck Pyrrhus directly on the head, either killing him instantly or knocking him out. Either way, he went down, and the enemy soldiers swarmed in and cut off his head. One of history's greatest military commanders, a man who defeated entire armies and conquered kingdoms, was taken out by a roof tile thrown by an old lady trying to protect her son. Pyrrhus had survived countless battles against trained warriors, only to be defeated by a piece of someone's roof. Sigurd Eysteinsson, also known as Sigurd the Mighty, was a Viking warlord who ruled Orkney, islands off Scotland, around the year 890. He was expanding Viking territory into northern Scotland. One day, Sigurd defeated his rival, a guy named Malmsey, in battle. And because Vikings were really into displaying their victories, Sigurd decided to take Malmsey's severed head as a trophy. So far, pretty standard Viking behavior. Brutal, but not unusual. Sigurd tied the head to his horse's saddle and rode off, probably feeling pleased with himself. But as he rode, something went wrong. The dead guy's teeth kept scraping against Sigurd's leg. It seems minor, right? But that scraping opened up a small wound, and that wound got infected. And that infection turned into sepsis. Sigurd the Mighty died from an infection caused by his defeated enemy's teeth. After the battle was over. After Sigurd had won. It's the ultimate case of ironic revenge. Malmsey got the last laugh from beyond the grave. His severed head ended up killing the guy who cut it off. George Plantagenet, the Duke of Clarence, was the brother of King Edward IV during the Wars of the Roses. This was a chaotic time with different families fighting for the throne. George ended up on the wrong side and was convicted of treason in 1478. He was sentenced to death, which wasn't surprising, but because he was nobility, he got a private execution. This means the exact details are vague. The rumor that spread was that George was drowned in a large barrel of Malmsey wine. Malmsey is a sweet wine, and supposedly it was George's favorite drink. This story might be complete nonsense. It could have been gossip people couldn't resist spreading. But by 1516, historians were writing it down as fact. Then in 1597, William Shakespeare included the wine drowning in his play Richard III, which sealed the story into popular culture forever. Whether it actually happened or not, the Duke of Clarence has gone down in history as the guy who maybe got drowned in his favorite wine. It's so weird and specific that people couldn't stop talking about it. Charles II of Navarre earned the nickname Charles the Bad for good reason. Born in 1332, he spent his life scheming, backstabbing, and manipulating. He wanted power so badly that he'd switch sides in wars and betray allies. He even faked his own kidnapping once to avoid fighting in a battle. People saw through it, and he became a laughingstock. By 1378, Spanish forces had defeated his tiny kingdom, and Charles lost almost all his power. By 1387, Charles was 55 years old, sick, and mostly immobile. His doctor prescribed a treatment that involved wrapping his body in linen sheets soaked in alcohol. This was supposed to generate heat and help him heal. Every night, a servant would wrap the king in these alcohol-soaked sheets and sew them tight. One night, the servant finished wrapping Charles, but didn't have scissors to cut the final thread. She looked around. No scissors, no knife, nothing sharp. So, she made the worst decision in royal servant history. She used an open flame from a candle to melt the thread. The alcohol-soaked sheets immediately caught fire. Charles, all wrapped up like a mummy, basically became... That's all I got for now. If you like this video, hit like and tell me what you think in the comments. And if you want more crazy stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because the next one's even wilder.